Hey guys, what's up? It's Val. So I want to talk really quickly about talents. Now, in a couple of my other videos, for instance, there's a Mythic Plus frequently asked questions guide, etc., uh, where I, briefly touch on this topic, but I've never done an entire video specifically addressing this. And so I see a lot of people in the Mage Discord still coming in like almost every day and asking this question. So I just want to do a brief video specifically addressing the talent question of freezing rain. And a lot of people ask, should I use freezing rain talent or splitting ice talent with this legendary or that legendary? It doesn't really matter which legendary. The short answer essentially is no. Um, in 9.0, 9.05, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be this way in 9.1 as well. There's absolutely no case in which freezing rain is better than splitting ice. Doesn't matter what legendary you're using, doesn't matter what content you're doing, whether it's raid, mythic plus, single target, two target, five target. Freezing rain, right now anyway, is never better than splitting ice. Okay. Now, I know there was a time, pretty recently actually, in 8.3, there was a popular build, the Packed Ice build, popularized by another Frost Mage, Kalaran. And in that build, yeah, Freezing Rain was absolutely the play. And that build really only worked basically because of Azerite powers. And now in Shadowlands, we've kind of gone back to a more Frost is a little bit more like it was in Legion. Okay, we don't have any of those systems affecting our talents and things like that. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of you who are asking the question about freezing rain are doing so because of a guide that's out there on, a pretty popular website for class guides. And that guide does say that freezing rain is the play, essentially. And I don't know why this is the case. I'm guessing because in the very last patch that we had, 8.3, it was very popular. And for what it's worth, I think that guide is kind of written by someone who plays mostly fire, doesn't really play a lot of frost, and that's what they went with. But for what it's worth, I know a lot of you guys trust me to give you accurate information and not steer you wrong. For what it's worth, I will do my best to, post up some various sims that I've done here with all the different legendaries that, most Frost Mages have right now with Slick Ice, Freezing Winds, Glacial Fragments, single target, two target, five target, you name it. I've attempted to run several different sims basically, and they all say the same thing, guys. Splitting ice all the way. So essentially, that's it, guys. I'm not gonna, specifically call out any guide writer or anything like that. I am just gonna tell you, if you're using freezing rain right now in Shadowlands 9.0, 9.05, probably going into 9.1, it's the wrong play. And just for good measure, I will briefly go over all of the talents that you should be using for max damage in any kind of endgame content, okay? First of all, if you're doing endgame content with bosses that can't be frozen, you're not just, running around solo leveling and doing quests, stuff like that. Lonely Winter is the only play here. It is so powerful because of how much it buffs Ice Lance. Lonely Winter's the only play here. Next up is honestly your choice between Shimmer and Ice Flows. They're both really good. Next, we have one of the major choices that you're going to have to make, at least in current Shadowlands content. Incanter's Flow, Focus Magic, or Rune of Power. Incanter's Flow can be very good when you're first learning fights and you have a lower gear level. Like maybe your mage is brand new, you're just starting to gear him up. Incanter's Flow at that gear level is honestly pretty close to Rune of Power, even. It really is. With the added benefit that you don't have to worry about like standing in your Rune of Power and moving out of mechanics and things like that. But the more gear you get, the farther apart it gets. So if I can make one recommendation, my advice Even if it feels hard, even if it feels wonky to, start training yourself to use Rune of Power, start learning Rune of Power. Because the more you practice it, by the time you have a lot of gear and you're more progressed through whatever it is you're doing, you have a high IO or you're in Mythic Raid, whatever. Eventually, Rune of Power will be the only play. It really does scale beyond the other two. And Focus Magic, actually, if you have two Frost Mages, both of whom can stay at or below 23% crit, Focus Magic can be very good for you. And this is something unfortunately, you'll have to sim between Focus Magic trading and Rune of Power to be able to tell which is better for you. But probably up to about like 220-ish, Focus Magic trading was still better for me. If I could, reduce my crit, regem, reenchant, things like that, reduce my crit to 23% or below, then it was better for me. But as I got up to like 225, 226, there's no amount of crit that I can dump to make Focus Magic better. Rune of Power is just automatically better at this gear level. So basically, in this gear, Rune of Power is ultimately the best option. However, as you get to that point, you do have options. Next up, Chain Reaction is the absolute only option here. And a lot of people ask, should I track my Chain Reaction buff to make sure that I, get it back up within the 10 seconds or whatever? Well, first of all, unless you have a Fingers of Frost proc or a Winter's Chill or whatever, it's not going to refresh anyway. So if it's at 1 second and you try to just do a quick dry ice lance to refresh it, it's not going to work. But more importantly, you don't have to track this, guys. You absolutely don't. Even if it did fall off, it's really hard to get it to fall off. Honestly, with the way we generate procs now, it's almost impossible to let this fall off unless you are not casting. Unless you're not ABC, always be casting. Next up, you actually have a minor choice. So on kite meta weeks in Mythic Plus, like Necrotic and definitely not in Sanguine, but especially in Necrotic, I like to run Frigid Winds because it slows the mobs more, lets the tank kite a little easier. However, Ice Ward is the only one here that is an actual DPS upgrade, because you can actually use Frost Nova to shatter a Frozen Orb, which, when you've got Icy Veins up, Frozen Orb will shatter and will proc Icy Propulsion, which will drastically reduce the cooldown of your next Icy Veins. With that, you can have Icy Veins up for almost every pack, almost every pull in a Mythic Plus dungeon. And so because of that, Ice Ward is the only one of these that has the potential to be an actual DPS upgrade. And I linked it in one of my other videos, but I'll probably link it again here. A Frost Mage named Ultimate Zero has an awesome video on exactly how to do this. So, I'm not going to try and steal his content. I will link to his video from this. And then, Ring of Frost, if your group needs some CC in Mythic Plus, this is really useful. Obviously, we just talked about Freezing Rain versus Splitting Ice. Thermal Void is the only play at 50, unfortunately. Glacial Spike is, unfortunately, it was great in 8.3, and I played the Glacial Spike build, but in 9.0, taking Glacial Spike is actually worse than taking no talent at all on this row, unfortunately. So, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave me a comment or catch me on stream. Thanks, guys. Good night.